On a bitter cold night beneath the stone arches of Winterfell's Godswood, the world turned for Benjen Stark in ways he would never understand until many years had passed. The snows were thick as lamb's wool, and the branches of the weirwood shuddered under their burden. Every step muffled, every breath blooming silver in the cold. He was but a child, 8 years old. Slight and sullen, half hidden in the folds of his father's old fur cloak. But he heard voices that night, voices not meant for him. He heard secrets, his father's low murmur, haunted by grief, and Maester Luwin's troubled reply. He heard the name Varys, a shadow in silk, the spy master in the far south, the man who knew every whisper, every fear, and every longing of the realm. Varys had written to Lord Rickard Stark, a letter sealed with the black wax of the hand, though Jon Arryn's signet had never touched it. Benjen's father, hard man though he was, spoke that night with tears in his eyes. He spoke of the threat from King's Landing, the games of power, the Game of Thrones, and the need for eyes and ears in the very heart of the storm. Benjen had heard these words, and though he barely understood, the gravity pressed on him like snow pressing on the thatch, relentless, inevitable. Something shifted in his small chest. Fear, perhaps, or something colder. The next day, Benjen was sent to the south, ostensibly to serve as a page in Jon Arryn's household. Catelyn wept, and Ned clasped his hand until it hurt, and Lyanna kissed his brow and told him to write. No one spoke of the letter. No one spoke of the shadow in silk. But when Benjen arrived in King's Landing, the first person he met was not the Hand, nor any lord, but Varys himself. He was not as Benjen had imagined from the tales, a grotesque spider weaving his webs in the dark, but a smooth, plump man, with eyes like whetstones and a smile as soft as velvet. He smelled of lilac and honey, and his voice, when he spoke, was gentle and lilting. "Welcome, Benjen Stark," Varys said, taking the boy's cold hand between his own. "You are far from home, and the city is large, dangerous, and full of shadows. But do not fear. I have been sent by your father to watch over you. You will not be alone." There was nothing to do but nod. The years ahead seemed endless. Benjen was given a room in the Red Keep, a small cell in the shadow of the great kitchens, where the air was always warm and fragrant with roasting meats. Varys appeared every night, slipping in and out without a sound, teaching him the names of the servants, the passages that snaked behind the walls, the ways to listen without being seen. Benjen learned that a page's best weapon was not a dagger, but an ear. At first, Benjen hated it. He hated the city, with its teeming streets and reeking gutters, its golden domes and leering gargoyles. He hated the court, with its laughter like breaking glass and its eyes always watching. He hated Varys too. His silk-soft words, his sly smiles, the way he seemed to know everything about Benjen before Benjen had even spoken. But time passes, and hate cools into something else. Benjen watched. Benjen listened. Benjen learned. He learned to move silently, to slip through the kitchens and down the wells, to disappear in a crowd. He learned the language of secrets, the weight of a glance, the meaning in a half-finished sentence, the power of a rumor passed in the night. He learned to keep his face still when the lords insulted the North, when the king laughed at the old gods, when Queen Rhaella wept behind closed doors. He learned that pain is a mask, and fear a cloak, and love a luxury for the strong. He learned, too, of kindness. Varys, whatever else he was, cared for the forgotten. The urchins in the alleys, the washerwomen, the children who slept in the crypts beneath the Red Keep, all these were his little birds. Benjen became one of them in time, not just a spy, but a friend, a protector, a whisperer in his own right. Benjen was 10 when he saw his first murder. A kitchen girl, throat cut open like a rabbit, blood seeping between the flagstones. The city guards laughed and stepped over her, but Varys made sure the girl's mother received a purse of silver and a quiet promise. Benjen watched it all, and his heart hardened, and his eyes grew sharper. He was 11 when he overheard the first plot. Sir Giles Rosby, drunk and angry, speaking of the king's madness and the need for new blood on the throne. Varys pressed him for details and Benjen told him everything. The names, the meeting places, the coins passed under the table. The next week, Sir Giles was found drowned in his own bath. Varys only nodded and smiled. Benjen was 12 when he understood, at last, what Varys wanted from him. Not just whispers and secrets, but loyalty. Not just knowledge but belief. The North was far away, a memory faded by the heat and noise of the city. But Varys was real, ever present, the spider in the heart of the web. "You are not a Stark," Varys told him one night, as they watched the stars from the ramparts. "You are something more. You are my eyes and ears, yes. But you are also my heart, if I have one. Never forget that." So Benjen became Varys' spy, but also his pupil, his confessor, his only true friend in a city where friendship was a weapon and trust a lie. Years passed. The game grew deadlier. Kings rose and fell, lords died in their beds, bastards became princes and back again. Benjen watched it all from the shadows. He grew tall, lean, hard-eyed and silent. The other pages feared him. The maids whispered of his coldness, his northern blood. But Varys was always there, always watching, always teaching. When Robert's rebellion broke, Benjen was 15, almost a man, but not yet hardened into steel. The city was a boiling cauldron of fear and violence. The Mad King screamed behind his doors. Rhaegar vanished to the south. The Queen wept. Varys sent Benjen out into the streets, to listen, to watch, to warn. He saw the riots, the fires, the looting. He heard the lords whispering treason, the gold cloaks planning their escape. He saw the bodies hanging from the gates, the blood running in the gutters. He brought word to Varys, and Varys brought word to the king, and the king did nothing. When Ned Stark rode into the city, victorious, grim and weary, Benjen was waiting. He was taller than he had been, colder, harder. His northern blood called out to him, but he felt no joy. He stood in the shadows as Ned knelt before the throne, as Robert was crowned, as the old world died and the new one began. That night, Varys found him in his cell, staring at the moon through the tiny window. "You should go to your brother," Varys said softly. "You have served me well, Benjen. You have seen the city as it is, broken, cruel, and full of secrets. You have learned much." Benjen said nothing. Varys touched his shoulder. "You are not a boy any longer. You must choose your own path." Benjen looked at him then. Really looked. At the soft hands, the gentle eyes, the sadness buried beneath the silks and smiles. "I am a Stark," Benjen said, voice rough. "But I am your spy too. The North needs eyes in the South. My brother will rule, but he will need me. Let me serve them both." "Da." Varys smiled, slow and sad. "You are wiser than I hoped." So Benjen remained in King's Landing, not as a page, but as a man grown, a whisperer, a shadow in the halls. He served the crown, but also the realm. He watched over Ned, over Robert, over Catelyn and Sansa and Arya. He watched and listened and waited. But the past does not sleep, and neither do the games of power. It was a cold winter night, years later, when Benjen learned the cost of secrets. He was in the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, questioning a jailer who had seen too much. The man was drunk, angry, fearful. He spoke of plots, of poison in the wine, of daggers in the dark. Benjen listened, weighed every word, felt the chill of fear in his gut. He left the dungeons and climbed the winding stairs to Varys' chambers, his mind racing. The city was on the edge of chaos again, the king drunk and violent, the lords restless, the realm cracking beneath the weight of old wounds. He found Varys at his desk, quill scratching softly on parchment. "There is a plot against the king," Benjen said without preamble. "Poison. The jailers have seen it. The cupbearer is compromised." "Benjen." Varys looked up, eyes calm, unreadable. "Who is behind it?" Benjen hesitated. "I do not know. The trail runs cold in the kitchens. Someone with power, perhaps the queen, Varys nodded. You have done well, Benjen. Leave it to me. But Benjen lingered. The room was quiet, the only sound the distant rush of wind through the high windows. Why do you do this? Benjen asked at last. Why play these games? Why serve kings who do not care, who only bring pain? Varys set aside his quill. Because someone must. Because the realm is more than its rulers. Because there are children starving in the streets, mothers weeping in the night, men dying for causes they do not understand. Because I have no house, no family, no name. Only the good of the realm. And because, once, I was a child like you, lost and frightened and alone. Benjen looked away, heart heavy. And what am I? Varys smiled, soft as silk. You are my hope. The days passed, and the storm grew. Ned Stark returned to the north, leaving Benjen behind. Robert ruled, and Cersei plotted, and the realm bled. Benjen worked in the shadows, sending word to his brother, warning him of danger, protecting his nieces and nephews as best he could. He watched as Joffrey rose, as Tyrion schemed, as Sansa suffered. But secrets have a price, and shadows cannot last forever. One night, as the bells tolled midnight, Benjen was summoned to the throne room. The king was dead, poisoned, just as the Jowler had warned. The court was in chaos, lords shouting, queens weeping, guards drawing swords. Benjen stood at the edge of the room, invisible, watching. Varys appeared beside him, as silent as a ghost. It begins, he whispered. Benjen nodded, feeling the old fear return, cold and sharp. But he did not run. He did not hide. He stood in the shadows, watching, listening, waiting. For he was Benjen Stark, son of Winterfell, shadow of the spider, the North's eyes in the south. He was the watcher in the dark, the whisper in the night. He was the realm's last hope, even if the realm would never know his name. And as the storm broke over King's Landing, as the Game of Thrones claimed yet another king, Benjen stood his ground, silent and unseen, the spider's son and the wolf's shadow, and prepared to do what must be done, whatever the cost. Kai, Pendi. Benjen lingered at the edge of the throne room, long after the chaos had begun to recede. The shouting grown hoarse, the tears dried or masked behind careful eyes. It was always the aftermath that revealed the shape of things to come. Who rushed to kneel before the next king, who slunk away in silence, who waited for orders, and who was already weaving their own plots. In those trembling moments when the crown had no certain head, a realm was remade with every choice and every word unspoken. He watched Queen Cersei gliding from the chamber on the arm of her son, her expression schooled into marble coldness. Young Joffrey walked with stiff, nervous pride, the hilt of his sword white in his grasp. While behind them, Littlefinger consoled Sansa Stark with a honeyed word and a hand that lingered too long at her elbow. The High Septon began a prayer, a plea to the gods for guidance, but few listened. Benjen pressed back against a fluted column, unnoticed, the black of his tunic blending with the deeper shadows behind the tapestries. It had become second nature. Observe, remember, speak little. But today, there was a weight to the silence that reminded him of the godswood in winter, the hush before the snowstorm breaks. He watched Varys drift between clusters of courtiers, offering condolence and wisdom in equal measure, nodding gravely at every new turn of the game. Only once did the spider's gaze meet his own, and in that moment Benjen read the warning clear as dawn. Patience, caution, the next move not yet made. When the throne room emptied at last, Benjen slipped from his post and made for the servants' stair. He passed under the great iron chandelier, its candles guttering in pools of their own wax, and out into the echoing halls. There were footsteps behind him, soft as breath, and he tensed. The palace at night was never truly empty. "You've been in the south too long, Stark," came a low voice from the darkness. "You don't walk like a wolf anymore." Benjen turned and saw Sandor Clegane leaning in a pool of shadow. The hound's face was half in darkness, the ruined side lost in the gloom. But his eyes glittered with suspicion. "Old habits die hard," Benjen replied, voice calm. He'd grown used to men like Clegane, blunt, violent, yet canny in their way. Hard to trust a man who walks so quietly. Sandor muttered. "You're always listening, aren't you?" "Someone must," Benjen said. "In this place, words are sharper than swords." Sandor grunted, an odd note of respect there. "Watch yourself, Stark. The Queen's out for blood, and there are too many daggers in the dark." He turned, his boots thudding away into the emptiness. Benjen stood a moment longer, watching the torchlight flicker along the stone. He thought of home, of Ned's steady hand, of the wolf blood that beat in his veins. He remembered Varys' lesson. Never let them see what you truly are. He took the winding stair down into the bowels of the keep. Here, beneath the ground, the air was cool and damp, heavy with the sense of earth and stone and secrets. It was a place for those who did not wish to be found. He found Varys already waiting in the secret room behind the old armory, his head bent over a map lit by a single lantern. Varys did not look up. They'll blame the Queen, of course. She'll blame Tyrion. Tyrion will blame Littlefinger. And Littlefinger, well, he'll profit from the confusion. Then, who profits most? Benjen asked, moving to stand beside him. The chaos, Varys replied, spreading his hands over the map. Always the chaos. It is a ladder, as our friend Petter likes to say, and right now, the realm stands at the bottom rung. Benjen studied the map, the river lines, the jagged mountains, the painted flames of battle. Ned will not come south again, he said at last. Nor will Robb, the North remembers. Varys' eyes flicked up, shrewd and glinting. The North is wise to stay away from southern games, but even the lone wolf is not immune to the winter that is coming. Our work must continue, Benjen. The game has changed, but the stakes remain. A soft rap at the secret door interrupted them. Varys nodded for Benjen to answer. He unbolted the panel, and a boy of 10 squeezed through, skinny as a whip, eyes big in a dirty face. The maids say Ser Boros is gathering men in the West Tower, the boy whispered, breathless. Says they're to ride out at dawn, but I heard him talking. He's scared. He thinks someone's coming for him. Varys smiled and offered the boy a fig. You've done well. Tell no one else, not even your shadow. The boy nodded and vanished, gone before Benjen could ask his name. They grow up so quickly, Varys said softly. And so must you. I have a task for you, Benjen. One only you can do. Benjen tensed, not from fear, but anticipation. It was always this way. The world poised between peace and ruin, and a single thread to pull. There is a ship, Varys continued, voice low. The Summer Child, at dock in the Blackwater. On it is a letter, bound for Old Town. In that letter, someone names your brother Ned as a conspirator in the king's death. If it sails, the whole realm may burn. You must intercept it, quietly, without blood if you can. Then the Malland. Benjen nodded. He was a Stark. He would do what must be done. He left Varys in the lamplight and slipped back through the winding tunnels, emerging beneath the stable yard. He donned a rough cloak and made his way through the sleeping city, past alehouses shuttered against the night and peddlers curled in their carts. He moved like a shadow, silent as a memory, and reached the river just as the first gray light of dawn touched the water. The docks were alive with motion, sailors shouting, ropes creaking, the stink of fish and pitch heavy in the air. Benjen kept his head down and watched. The Summer Child was a lean caravel, her hull painted green and gold, the sigil of House Beesbury fluttering from her stern. The crew bustled about, but Benjen saw the man he needed at once, a scribe, stooped and fussy, clutching a leather satchel to his chest. He let the man board, waited until the ship's master was occupied with a surly customs officer, then moved with purpose. He followed the scribe into the aft cabin, slipped behind him as he bent to stow his satchel. Before the man could cry out, Benjen clapped a hand over his mouth and pressed a knife to his throat, not to kill, but to warn. You have a letter, he whispered, voice cold. A letter naming Eddard Stark as a traitor. Give it to me and you live. The scribe shook, eyes wide with terror. He fumbled in his satchel and produced a sealed scroll. Benjen took it, slashed it open with his dagger, and read. It was worse than he feared. A list of names, all those loyal to the Old Hand, accused of plotting Robert's death. If it reached Old Town, the Citadel would send word across the realm, and war would follow. Benjen pocketed the letter and backed away. "Tell no one," he said. "Lose yourself in the city. If you breathe a word, the spider will know." He left the ship and melted into the morning crowd. By the time the summer child cast off, Benjen was gone, the scroll already burning to ash in a blackened brazier beneath the city. He returned to Varys before noon, the ashes wrapped in a strip of silk. Varys accepted them with a nod. "You did well, Benjen. You saved lives today, though none will ever know it. That is the price," Benjen replied. "We are shadows." Varys regarded him, something like pride in his gaze. A true shadow needs no name. But even shadows must sometimes stand in the light. There will be other letters, other knives. You must be ready. Benjen nodded, though he felt the weight of it settling on his shoulders. For a moment, he wished for the simple snows of home, for the honest silence of the gods' wood. But wishes were for children, and Benjen Stark had not been a child for many years. He left the secret room and returned to his own small quarters, high beneath the eaves of Maegor's Holdfast. From the narrow window he could see the city spread below him. The crowded alleys, the red roofs, the gleaming towers of the great sept. Somewhere in that city were his kin, lost in their own dangers. Sansa in the Queen's hands, Arya wild and untamed, the bastard Jon far to the north at the wall. Benjen stared into the blue haze of noon and wondered if he would ever see any of them again. The city roiled. News of the king's death spread like wildfire, stoked by half-truths and lies. The small folk feared famine, and the gold cloaks marched in the streets. Whispers grew of a boy king, of war to the east, of armies mustering in the reach. Benjen heard every rumor, weighed every word, sifting truth from lies as a miner sifts gold from the river silt. Littlefinger sent for him one night, and Benjen went, as he always did, weary and cold-eyed. The Lord of Coin waited in his tower, his smile sharp as a razor. "Lord Stark's little wolf," Petyr Baelish mused, pouring wine. "You're a rare thing in this city, Benjen. Honest, or at least honest enough to know when to lie." Benjen sipped the wine but did not smile. "You didn't call me here for flattery." "No," Littlefinger agreed, setting the cup aside. "I called you because the balance is shifting. The Queen grows bold. The spider grows wary. And you, Benjen, well, you could tip the scales." Benjen waited. "I have no love for the Queen," Littlefinger said, his voice dropping. "But I love chaos less. I would see Sansa safe. I would see a Stark in Winterfell, not a corpse on the steps of Baelor's Sept. The Queen suspects Varys, and you perhaps by extension. She will come for you soon." Benjen felt the old cold settle in his bones. "What do you want?" "A simple thing," Littlefinger said, almost laughing. "Loyalty. To me when the time comes. When the city burns as it must, save Sansa. Save her, and I will save you." Benjen met his gaze, silent. "I'll consider it," he said at last. He left, heart pounding. In the darkness, everything was a trap, every kindness a snare. He found Sansa in the Godswood the next day, sitting by the heart tree, her eyes red from weeping. "They say you were a wolf once," she said, her voice small and shaking. "Before you became one of the spider's shadows." Benjen knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "I am still a wolf, Sansa. I will always be. This place." He gestured to the walls, the towers, the sky. "It changes us, but it cannot break us. You are a Stark. You must remember that." Sansa looked up at him, hope flickering in her blue eyes. "Can you help me, Uncle? Can you get me home?" Benjen squeezed her hands. "I will do everything I can. I promise." They sat in silence for a time, listening to the wind in the leaves. After, Benjen made his way to the great sept, slipping past the guards, finding Arya training with a wooden sword in the shadow of the pillars. She grinned when she saw him, all wild hair and bruised knees. "You're getting slow, uncle," she teased, darting forward. He caught her in a quick embrace. "And you're getting dangerous, little wolf." She laughed and ran off into the maze of pews, the echoes of her laughter bouncing from the marble. That night, as the city slept, Benjen stood at his window, watching storm clouds gather over Blackwater Bay. Lightning flickered on the horizon, distant thunder rolling. Somewhere out there, armies were moving. Renly in the Reach, Stannis on Dragonstone, Robb marching from the north. He thought of the old gods, of his father's voice in the snow, of the letter that had brought him to this place. He thought of Varys, ever patient, ever watching. He thought of the price of secrets and the cost of shadows. He donned his cloak and slipped into the night, passing through hidden doors and silent halls, until he reached the old rookery. There, he found Maester Pycelle, dozing over a half-written scroll. Benjen moved quietly, careful not to wake the old man, and took what he needed. A raven, swift and black, and a scrap of parchment. He wrote by candlelight, the words quick and sure. "Ned, the game has changed. Beware the queen. Trust no one but blood. The wolves are being hunted. B." He tied the note to the raven's leg and sent it flying north, into the storm. Then he returned to the shadows, knowing that his part was not yet done. He met Varys in the darkness. The spider cloaked in gray, his eyes weary. "It is time," Varys said. "The city is no longer safe. You must choose, Benjen. Stay and fight, or flee and live." Benjen looked at him, felt the weight of 1,000 secrets. "I am a Stark," he said. "I will fight." Varys bowed his head, a rare gesture of respect. "Then may the gods be with you, my friend." Benjen walked the halls one last time, the wolf and the spider's son, moving through the heart of a realm that teetered on the edge of ruin. He thought of home, of Ned and Robb and Jon. He thought of Sansa, of Arya, of the children who would inherit this broken world. He would fight for them. He would fight for the realm. He would fight, even if it meant becoming a shadow forever. For Benjen Stark was no longer just a boy lost in the snows of Winterfell, nor merely a whisper in the halls of power. He was something more, a bridge between north and south, between honor and survival, between hope and despair. As dawn broke, painting the city in blood and gold, Benjen strode into the storm, ready to play his part in the great game. He was a Stark, a wolf, a spy, and a son of shadows. And the realm would remember him, even if only as a rumor, a whisper, a name spoken in awe or fear, in the darkest heart of the Game of Thrones. Oh, Kandi. The city awoke to chaos. Rumors tumbled through King's Landing like scraps of paper in the wind. Each retelling twisted, every story sharpened to cut or soothe, depending on who whispered it. The king's death had thrown all order into question, and the uneasy peace that held lords and small folk in their places splintered like old bone. In the streets, men clustered in knots, faces hooded and wary, voices taut with speculation. Soldiers in Lannister crimson clattered across the cobbles. Swift and unsmiling. Gold cloaks glared at every passerby, each suspecting the next of some secret allegiance. Benjen moved through it all as if he were made of mist. He kept his hood drawn low, and the glimmer of stark gray hidden, eyes reading the mood of the city with every footfall. Children darted through alleys with news, real and imagined. Bakers' wives traded stories of blood and poison over steaming loaves. Innkeepers invented tales of traitors with each new round. In the Red Keep, the servants kept to their duties, but always with half an ear bent to the wind, wondering which lord would command them tomorrow. Benjen visited the kitchens first, for it was here that news brewed hottest and flowed quickest. He found old Nella, who'd been there since King Aerys was a child, stirring a pot of fish stew and scolding a pair of scullions. "Wolves in the hall, snakes in the grass," she grumbled as he sidled up. "We'll be eating rat if this keeps on. You've a northern look about you. Ain't you that Stark boy coming to the south?" He nodded, letting her see the familiar glint of his mother's ring on his finger. "You know me, Nella." She peered at him with small, sharp eyes. I do. And I'll tell you this, there's naught for you in this nest of vipers. Best be getting back north if you can." Nembanawa. He smiled, a faint quirk at the edge of his mouth. Not all of us can go home. Not now. She softened then, ladling stew into a wooden bowl and handing it to him with a muttered blessing. Watch yourself, boy. The Queen's men are hunting for traitors, and Lannister gold buys silence faster than a blade. There's talk the spider's not as safe as he once was. Men like you and Varys, wolves and spiders. This city has little love for either. Dante. He thanked her and left, leaving the bowl untouched on a windowsill for the crows. Even food was a message here, a signal to any who knew how to read it. From the kitchens he wound his way upward, slipping behind a knot of septas whispering prayers for the king's soul, ducking past a trio of knights grumbling about their lack of orders. At every turn, Benjen felt the pulse of uncertainty, each corridor a trap, every face a mask. He found Arya, as he often did, skulking near the armory, half her face shadowed by a battered hood. She looked up as he approached, fierce and wary, her fingers curled around the hilt of a wooden sword. "Uncle," she said quietly. He knelt beside her, lowering his voice. "You're safe?" She nodded, but her eyes were clouded with confusion and anger. "They keep me locked in my room half the day. Septa Mordain says it's for my protection, but I know better. They want to keep us as hostages." Benjen put a hand on her shoulder. "You're not wrong. But you must be patient. Survive now, and you may find a way home." "Now," Arya bristled. "I don't want to wait. Sansa just cries all day. She thinks Joffrey is going to marry her and make her queen. I hate it here." Benjen searched her face, saw Lyanna in the stubborn set of her jaw. "You are not alone, Arya. There are friends even here, in the dark. You just have to know where to look." He drew a coin from his sleeve. A dull, battered thing, stamped with a sigil neither northern nor southern. He pressed it into her hand. "If you ever need help, show this to a baker named Tom in Fleabottom. Tell him the wolf sent you. He'll see you safe." Dendar. Arya clutched the coin, her eyes wet but determined. "Thank you, Uncle. Will you come for us?" "I'll do all I can." He squeezed her hand, then melted away into the maze of the keep. Benjen knew the spider's network better than any other man in the city. He had helped build it, after all, and many of the little birds owed as much to him as to Varys. He paused in the rookery, checking the cages for messages sent north, and slipped a second letter beneath the straw for the next raven bound for Winterfell. "Keep the pack together. The wind howls at our door." He returned to his quarters, only to find Varys waiting for him in the half-light, a silent shadow among the silks. "You have been busy, my dear Benjen." Benjen said nothing, merely crossing to the narrow window and watching the city sprawl below them. The smoke from the bakeries rose in trembling spirals. The distant bells rang a warning for midday. "Littlefinger has offered you an alliance, I take it?" Varys' tone was soft, almost fond. "He wants Sansa. He wants chaos," Benjen replied. "He thinks he can play me." Varys nodded. "He plays everyone. But some players lose their fingers, and some lose their lives. The Queen is watching, Benjen. More than ever. She suspects the shadows. You must be more careful." "No." Benjen faced him then, studying the round, unreadable face, the eyes that had seen too much for any man to bear. "You said the city was no longer safe. Will you run, Varys?" A smile ghosted across the eunuch's lips. "A spider's web is everywhere, even when you do not see it. I have other burrows. But you, my friend, you must decide who you serve. The realm? The Starks? Yourself? Soon, there will be no more time for half measures." Then, Benjen looked down at his hands, knuckles scarred and weathered. "You raised me to serve the realm. My family, I owe them all. But I cannot save everyone." "No, but you can save someone," Varys murmured. "And perhaps, in the end, that is enough." He left Benjen alone with his thoughts and the silent press of the city all around. By evening, the city had grown more tense still. The king's body was being prepared for burial, and rumors of another king, Stannis, Renly, even Robb Stark, competed for the loudest whisper. The gold cloaks prowled like wolves denied a kill, and in the great hall, The lords bickered over titles and coin. Benjen watched from the shadows as Sansa sat stiffly beside Cersei, her hands folded, her face pale. Joffrey stood at the foot of the throne, his chin high, his eyes darting from lord to lord. He looked every inch the frightened boy beneath the borrowed crown. A commotion at the doors drew all eyes. A messenger from the city gates, muddy and bruised, announced that men in Baratheon colors had been sighted marching on the southern roads. Cersei's lips tightened, and Sansa went whiter still. Benjen slipped out while the noise rose, passing a nod to a serving girl with a broken tooth, a bird in Varys' web. She whispered as she passed him, "Queen's men searching the tunnels. For you." He moved swiftly, winding down to the dungeons beneath Maegor's holdfast, the stink of rot and damp heavy in the air. He knew every passage here, every loose stone. He ducked through a hidden door behind a row of wine casks, and found himself in darkness, the air close and thick. It was there that he found Tyrion Lannister, hunched over a game board, a candle guttering low. "Well met, Stark," the dwarf said without looking up. "Or should I say, well hidden." Benjen didn't waste time. "Why are you here?" "Waiting for the tide to turn," Tyrion said. "You, I imagine, are doing the same." He looked up, eyes sharp. "The Queen means to purge the keep. All those not of Lannister blood are suspects. Even Varys. Even me, should I outlast my usefulness." Benjen studied him. "You know a way out?" Tyrion smirked. "I know several. The question is, will you take it? Or are you too wedded to shadows and webs?" "No." A moment passed before Benjen answered. "If I go, I take my family." Tyrion rose, brushing dust from his doublet. "Then you'd best move quickly. There are eyes everywhere, and not all of them are as friendly as mine." They parted with an understanding. Tyrion vanished into the gloom, and Benjen followed a twisting passage to the servants' quarters. He found Arya there, sharpening her wooden blade on a scrap of stone. "Come," he whispered. "We leave at midnight. Tell Sansa nothing yet. Meet me at the west wall. And Arya, bring nothing you cannot carry." "Bendo." She nodded, fierce and silent. Nightfall found Benjen moving through the underbelly of the Red Keep, gathering what few friends he had. The baker Tom, the old stable master, a pair of silent girls who'd once carried messages for Varys. All owed him some favor, some debt. He called them in, gave instructions in quick, low tones, and sent them off to prepare. He slipped into the Maegor's tower to find Sansa. Why? She was alone, staring at the moon through iron bars. Her eyes flicked up as he entered, fear and hope warring on her face. "Uncle?" He knelt by her side, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her cheek. "Sansa, I need you to be brave, just for a little longer. Tonight, we go home." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Will Arya come too?" "Yes, both of you." She nodded, gathering herself, and Benjen kissed her brow. "Whatever happens, stay silent. Trust no one but Arya and me." She nodded again. He slipped out, moving like a wraith through the halls, heart pounding with every step. In the kitchens, Tom pressed a warm loaf into his hands, and the stablemaster muttered, "3 horses saddled at the postern. Good luck, Stark." Then Missau. Benjen waited in the shadows of the west wall as the bells marked midnight. Arya came first, her face streaked with soot, her eyes bright with excitement and fear. Sansa followed, shivering in a rough cloak. Benjen pulled them both close. "We move now. Keep together. If we're separated, make for the Godswood. Tom will meet you there." They moved swiftly, silent as cats, through gardens and passageways. Only Varys birds knew. At the postern gate, 3 horses waited. Benjen lifted Sansa onto one, Arya onto another, and mounted the last himself. They rode through the sleeping city, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the patrols. The moon lit their way, silver on cobblestones, as they crossed the river and wound through the alleys of Flea Bottom. There, at the edge of the city, Tom the baker waited with a lantern. He guided them through the ruins of an old sept, down to the hidden river path. As the first blush of dawn broke, Benjen led his nieces out through a ruined postern, across the Blackwater, and into the marshes beyond. He glanced back only once, watching the city shrink behind them. The towers red in the morning, the banners limp in the breeze. In the distance, bells tolled for the dead king, and the new one who would sit uneasy on the throne. They rode hard, keeping to the woods and winding trails. Benjen led them north, past villages where folk stared in wonder or fear, past burned fields and empty watchtowers. At every inn, he paid double for silence, and always he watched the road behind, expecting pursuit. It was not until dusk fell, 2 days out from King's Landing, that he allowed them to rest. In a thicket near a rushing stream, he built a small fire, set Arya to watch, and sat with Sansa beneath the stars. She pressed close to him, her shivers less from cold than from fear and exhaustion. "Will we really get home?" she whispered. "We will," he promised. "So long as we keep moving. So long as we stay together." Arya sat beside them, silent and fierce. Benjen looked at the two girls, his family, his duty, the last hope of the North. He remembered Varys' words. "You can save someone." He would see them home, whatever it cost. Far behind, the city howled and roared. The storm only just begun. But in the darkness beyond its walls, 3 Starks rode north together. Shadows no longer. Family, wolves and survivors in a realm of knives and secrets. Oh, Ka. The dawn mist hung low over the marshes as Benjen pressed the pace. The soft slop of hooves in mud, a steady drum behind his thoughts. The girls rode close, Arya ever restless and peering at every bird call. Sansa silent as a shadow, her gaze distant with old fear. They were a sorry band, uncle and nieces, 2 borrowed horses, and 1 old gelding. All their hopes and future knotted in the battered saddlebags. But they were free. For now. Benjen rode point, the old god's wood medallion cold at his throat, eyes sweeping every ridge and hollow. The road north was treacherous. More so now, when gold cloaks or Lannister men might be hidden behind every tree, when the war had sent honest folk running, and left the wilds to wolves, and worse. Each mile was earned in sweat and silence. He trusted no face, not even those who called themselves friend. Varys had taught him too well. Every farmer at his gate, every innkeeper with too much to say, every traveler they overtook could be a hunter in disguise. That night, in the shelter of a ruined sheepfold, Arya fidgeted by the fire, toying with the battered coin Benjen had given her. Sansa lay on her side, wrapped tight in her cloak, staring into the red coals. The wind moaned through the broken stones, and every so often Benjen's hand drifted to the dagger at his hip. When Arya finally spoke, her voice was soft and gruff at once. "What happens if we're caught?" Benjen answered without looking up from his whetstone. "We Starks. We endure. If we're caught, you remember who you are. Don't lie unless you must, but never tell them where I am. And if you get a chance to run, you run. Find a village, a sept, anyone with reason to hate the Lannisters." Sansa turned, her face pale in the firelight. "And if we make it north?" Benjen caught her gaze, saw the deep well of fear and hope behind it. "Then you're home. The North remembers. There's strength in Winterfell. Robb, your mother, even the bannermen. So long as a Stark breathes, there's hope." "Then Benawa." Arya poked the fire, sending up a flurry of sparks. "I'll fight, if I have to." He smiled, brief and fond. "I know you will, little wolf, but the time for swords comes after the time for running." They slept in shifts. Benjen dreamed of ice and stone, of ravens crying in a storm. He woke at every crack of twig, every distant howl. When dawn came, cold and colorless, he saddled the horses and led them deeper into the woods, following deer trails north and east. He dared not trust the main roads. Word of their flight would travel faster than they could ride. The days blurred, rivers crossed, wild apples scavenged, villages skirted at a distance. Once, a company of Sellswords passed by at dusk. Battered and rowdy, a stag's antlers painted crude on their shields. Benjen drew the girls down into a hollow, covering their tracks with brush and waiting. Breath held until the sounds faded. Another day, they found a peddler's cart, overturned and burning. The driver nowhere to be seen, and a clutch of frightened children cowering in the brush. Sansa wanted to help, but Benjen shook his head. Too dangerous, too many eyes. By the fourth day, they had left the fertile riverlands for the stony hills near the neck. Here, the land was wet and half drowned. Every path uncertain. The marshes were alive with insects and the croak of frogs. Wolves howled at dusk, and even Arya was subdued by the deep, haunted hush. That night, as Benjen prepared a meager supper of boiled roots, Arya slipped away, returning an hour later with a clutch of wild duck eggs. Sansa brightened at the rare treat, and for a brief while laughter returned, soft, uncertain, but real. As they ate, Benjen found himself thinking of Varys, of the old lessons whispered in the Red Keep's dark. You must know when to hide and when to reveal, when to be the whisper and when to be the knife. Never trust a promise, and never make one you cannot keep. He had made promises, perhaps too many, but these two, his blood, were his to save or lose. On the fifth night, rain lashed the land. They huddled beneath a bent willow, horses tied close. Benjen kept watch, cloak drawn tight, eyes stinging from lack of sleep. The river had swollen, choking the trails. Their progress slowed to a crawl. Lightning showed figures moving on the far bank, 5 men, rough-clad and armed, picking their way along the shallows. Benjen pressed the girls down and waited, counting heartbeats, watching as the men vanished northward. Bandits, or worse. He let them rest a little longer before moving. Near dawn they came upon an abandoned mill. The great wheel rotted in the stream. The house half collapsed but dry inside. There at last, Benjen let himself sleep. Sansa curled close at his side. Arya sprawled at the door. He woke to whispers. Sansa and Arya, debating in hushed tones whether the mist outside was a sign from the old gods or just the morning. He smiled, the ache in his chest easing for a moment. They were Starks, resilient, stubborn, alive. But the world did not pause for their comfort. Before midday, Benjen heard the distant clatter of hooves. Dozens, maybe more. He pulled the girls back into the mill and watched through a chink in the boards. A column of riders passed, banners furled, armor dulled by mud and rain. Lannister colors, unmistakable. He waited until their dust had faded, then led the girls deeper into the wild, trusting old instincts to guide him. By evening, the land began to rise, a sign they were near Moat Cailin, the ancient gate to the north. But even as hope grew, so did the danger. Scouts ranged far from the main column, hungry for reward or favor from their southern lords. Benjen doubled back, taking hidden tracks, always watching the sky for the black wings of Varys' ravens. That night, as Arya slept, and Sansa combed the knots from her hair, Benjen sat at the entrance to their hollow knife in hand and weighed their future. He thought of Ned, lost now, perhaps dead, the rumors growing darker with each mile. He thought of Robb, forced to play at war before he'd grown to manhood. He thought of Varys, the spider, whose lessons had shaped him, whose web he still served. Who do you serve, Benjen? The realm? The North? Or these two children? The answer came in a whisper, old as winter. Family first. Always. The next morning dawned bright, a rare gift. The marshes steamed, and birds sang in the willow tops. Benjen woke to Arya standing guard, her wooden sword poised like a knight's. I heard something, she whispered. He went still, listening. There, a rustle, faint and close. He motioned Arya to silence, reached for his bow, and waited. From the reeds came a man, tall, gaunt, dressed in green and brown, his face painted with mud. He froze as he saw Benjen, then raised his hands. I mean no harm, he called, voice rough but wary. I saw your fire last night. Benjen didn't lower the bow. Who are you? The man glanced behind him, as if to be sure he was alone. I am Howland Reed, Lord of Greywater Watch. I know a Stark when I see one. Benjen let out a breath. Howland Reed, Nen's old friend, loyal to the bone, lord of the Cranagmen. He motioned him closer, and when Howland stepped into the light, Sansa and Arya gasped. He looked like something from a tale. Half swamp, half man, his eyes bright with cunning. "You're far from home, Benjen Stark," Reed said softly. "The Neck is no place for children in these times." Benjen nodded, lowering his bow. "We're hunted. The girls must reach Winterfell. Can you help us?" Howland Reed studied the girls, seeing the fear and hope mingled in their eyes. He nodded. "You are safe for now. My people watch the ways. Come, you'll travel as Crannog folk now, not highborn, not prey for Lannisters." He led them by hidden paths, through waist-deep water, under arching boughs heavy with moss. Reed's people appeared and vanished like spirits, lean and silent, faces painted in mud and leaf. They spoke little, but brought food. Fish, sweetwater crab, roots and berries. The journey changed. Benjen felt the tension easing as the days passed. Danger still lingered, but the Reeds protected them, and Howland's word was law. Sansa found her voice again, laughing at Arya's antics, singing old songs when she thought none listened. Arya made friends with a Crannog girl her own age, learning to paddle a boat and snare frogs. Howland watched Benjen closely, as if measuring something. One night, as the children slept, he joined Benjen by the fire. "You have seen much in the south," Reed said quietly. "I have," Benjen replied. "Too much, perhaps." Howland nodded. "Varys trained you well, but shadows and whispers are not the North's way. You must learn to be a wolf again, not just a spider's shadow." "And now?" Benjen gazed into the flames. "I want only to see them home. They are home." Howland said, "When you remember what it means to be Stark." Benjen looked at him then, seeing wisdom and sorrow in equal measure. "And if the war finds us first?" Howland's smile was thin and fierce. "The North remembers, and so do the Reeds." Within a week, they neared the edge of the Neck, the land rising to meet the stony hills of the north. Reed's folk brought news. Robb Stark had called the banners, marching south with a great host. Winterfell was preparing for siege or worse. The girls rode in boats through the last of the marshes, Reed's son Jojen guiding Arya, while Sansa sang to Reed's daughter Mira. On the last day, Howland led Benjen aside, his voice low. "Word travels faster than wolves. Varys will know you are alive. Others will come, for good or ill. The North is your home, but your shadow will follow you. What will you do?" Benjen thought of the girls, of Winterfell's gray towers, of the storms to come. "I will serve. I will protect them, and I will teach them what I know." "Now," Reed nodded, satisfied. As dusk fell, Winterfell's great walls rose before them, stark against the sky. The gates swung wide, banners flapping, men shouting in wonder and joy. Benjen led Arya and Sansa through the crowd, up to the great hall, where Robb met them at the steps. Older, changed, but still his father's son. The reunion was fierce and raw. Sansa sobbing into Robb's chest, Arya whooping and dancing, servants crying and hugging one another. Benjen stood back, letting the joy wash over him. Later, in the quiet of the Godswood, he knelt before the old heart tree, pressing his forehead to the red, bleeding bark. "I am home," he whispered, the words thick with relief and longing. But the shadows remain. A wind stirred the leaves. Somewhere, an owl called. He rose, found the girls waiting at the edge of the pool, hands clasped. "We're safe now?" Sansa asked, voice trembling. He drew them close, heart full. "Safe for now. But the world is changing. You must remember what you've learned. About fear, about hope, about family. You are Starks, and the North endures." "Nine." Arya grinned, fierce and wild. "We'll fight, together." He smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "Yes, together." Winterfell's towers stood strong behind them, and for a moment, all the world felt right. But Benjen knew the truth. The Game of Thrones did not end at the Neck, nor did Varys' whispers cease at the gates. War was coming, and with it, choices that would shape the fate of the realm. He would face them, as a Stark and a survivor. He would teach the children what it meant to be both wolf and shadow. And in the heart of Winterfell, with family beside him, Benjen Stark was ready at last to live for something greater than secrets and survival. For in the end, the realm's hope was not in webs or whispers, but in the bonds that held them together, in the blood that ran true, and the family that endured. The North remembered, and as dawn broke cold and clear, Benjen Stark remembered too. Ka. The ancient stones of Winterfell were a balm to the spirit, and yet Benjen found himself restive, unable to surrender to the peace so many expected of him. Within the high walls, the frost was clean, and the silence deep. The hallways rang with the echoes of homecoming. Robb's laughter, the measured stride of Catelyn's footsteps, Arya's running feet, Sansa's song, but beneath it all, a new tension pressed, the North quivering like a drawn bow. Even here, Varys' training clung to Benjen like a second skin. The walls had ears. Trust, once shattered, was not easily mended. He walked the corridors at dawn, counting the guard changes and listening to the gossip of the kitchen maids. He watched from the battlements as crows wheeled over the godswood, black shapes stark against the pale sky. He wandered the stables, talking with the old men and the stable boys, measuring the mood. The North was wary. Word of Ned Stark's imprisonment in King's Landing was spreading, every retelling darker than the last. There was talk of Lannister treachery, of southern wars and broken oaths. At every hearth, eyes flickered to Benjen for news or reassurance, as if he could conjure hope by his very presence. Robb met him on the ramparts one morning, a pale mist rising from the fields below. Robb looked older, worn by weeks of command and the weight of 1,000 hopes. They stood together in silence, the way Stark men do, and watched the sun rise through a crack in the clouds. "You brought them home," Robb said at last, voice hoarse. "I did," Benjen answered, scanning the horizon. Robb's jaw clenched. "I wish Father had sent you south instead of me." Benjen shook his head. "I went south for secrets. You ride for war. Neither task is easy, but yours is the heavier burden." Robb studied his uncle, searching for something. Advice, or maybe absolution. "Mother wants me to call the banners. She says we cannot let Father die alone." "She is right," Benjen replied, the words slow and measured. "But war is not just swords and banners. It's whispers too. Deceit, hidden knives. The North is strong, but we cannot fight shadows with steel alone." Robb nodded, troubled. "Can you help me? I have men who spy for me, but none as silent as you." Benjen glanced at his nephew, weighing what could be said. "Varys once told me that every man must choose his own web. I can teach you to listen, really listen, not just to your friends, but to your enemies. Fear is a message, Robb. So is silence." Nemdero. A flock of geese flew over the woods, their calls high and lonely. "Will you stay?" Robb asked quietly. "Or will the spider's web pull you south again?" Benjen met his eyes, the vow already forming on his tongue. "My place is here with the pack. If the south calls, I'll answer as a wolf, not a spider." Robb's relief was obvious, though he hid it behind a gruff nod. "Good. I'll need you, Uncle. We all will." Benjen clapped his shoulder, pride and worry mingling in his chest. Catelyn called a council that afternoon, gathering the household in the great hall. Ser Rodrik was there, and Maester Luwin, and the bannermen who had already come. Tallheart, Glover, Umber, Manderley. The air was thick with anticipation, every lord bristling at the insult to their liege. Catelyn's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "We will not abandon Ned. Nor will we allow the Lannisters to dictate terms to the North." A murmur of agreement. Benjen watched, silent, as the council debated. Ser Rodrik wanted swift action, a march to the neck and beyond. Manderley urged caution. Food stores, winter preparations. The Great John bellowed for blood and vengeance. Through it all, Benjen caught every word, every nervous glance, every half-suppressed fear. When at last the council dispersed, Catelyn found Benjen by the hearth, her face taut. "Is it true what they say?" she asked quietly. "That you learned to be invisible in King's Landing?" Benjen offered a small smile. "Invisible and invincible are not the same." She took his hand, squeezing hard. "Keep them safe. If war comes, the girls must be protected. Bran, too. Rickon is still a babe. You are their uncle." "Ben?" "I know," he replied. "And you are their mother. We are both all that stands between them and the world." She let go, shoulders trembling. That night, Benjen found Arya in the Godswood, perched on a branch of the heart tree, her face dappled red by the weirwood's bloody leaves. "You're not going south again, are you?" she demanded. He smiled. "No, I have run enough for 10 men." She looked away, biting her lip. "I want to fight. I want to help Robb. You will. In time. For now, you learn. Watch, dot. Listen. A wolf must know when to bare her teeth, and when to wait in the grass." "Nendando." Arya slid down beside him, eyes fierce. "Will you teach me? The way Varys taught you?" He considered. "Yes. But my lessons are for Starks, not spiders. First lesson, never let your enemy choose the ground. Second, trust your family even when it hurts." She nodded. Solemn. A rustle at the edge of the wood. Sansa, approaching warily, her steps cautious. "Mother wants us inside," she called. Benjen beckoned her close, pulling both girls to his side. "You are Starks. Remember that, whatever comes." Then Turbiner. In the days that followed, Benjen worked in quiet ways. He set a watch on the eastern woods and trained a handful of trusted men in the arts of silence and subtlety. He taught Arya to read lips, to sense a lie by the twitch of a brow. He showed Sansa how to listen beneath the words of the visiting lords, to catch what was not said. He trained Bran to slip unseen through the castle's tunnels, to watch from the shadows, to remember every detail. Winterfell became his web, and he moved within it, as a wolf among his pack. The ravens brought word of war daily, Tywin Lannister mustering in the west, Stannis proclaiming himself king, Renly gathering banners in the Reach. Most disturbing were the letters from White Harbor. Ships lost on the coast. Strangers seen in the woods. Old fears returned, the shadows beyond the wall. The ghosts of the long night. Benjen watched the stars at night and wondered if any man could shield his family from so many enemies, visible and invisible. One night, as snow began to fall, a lone rider arrived at the gates. Howland Reed, hunched and mud-splattered, bearing news from the south. Benjen greeted him at the gate, embracing him with fierce relief. "Howland, what brings you so far north?" Reed's eyes were sharp, his voice grave. "Whispers, Benjen. I bring word of a new alliance. The Freys and Lannisters, bound by marriage. Robb must know. There are other things too. Strange tidings from the neck. Old places waking. Things moving in the marsh that should sleep." Benjen felt the hair on his neck rise. "The old stories?" Howland nodded. "They are not stories. Not anymore." That night, Benjen shared Reed's warnings with Robb and Catelyn. The North must prepare not just for southern blades, but for things darker and older than Lannister gold. He urged Robb to send scouts south, to watch every ford and causeway, to trust the Crannogmen. But the household was already fracturing, some eager for war, others anxious for the coming winter. Old loyalties and old hatreds tangled in every corridor. As days passed, Benjen became the silent guardian, training boys for the guard, reading every message twice, planting whispers among the servants, even recruiting old Septon Chael for news from the small folk. He moved like a ghost, always watching, always wary. And then, one night, a shadow slipped through Winterfell's gate. A girl in torn cloaks, eyes wild with terror. She collapsed at the steps, and Benjen rushed to her side. She gasped a warning. "South." Riders, red and gold, 3 days behind, then fainted. Robb was summoned at once. Benjen worked with Maester Lewin, reviving the girl with honeyed wine and broth. She awoke at last, clutching Benjen's sleeve. "They burned my father's farm," she whispered. "Said the king sent them. Lannister men. More will come." Benjen pressed her hand, offering what comfort he could. "You're safe now. You're in the north." He went to Robb at once. "We cannot wait," Robb said, voice grim. "If Lannister men ride this far, the war is at our door." Benjen nodded. "You have the north. But never forget, the enemy has spies as well. I'll take a dozen good men and see what I can learn on the southern road." Robb's eyes shone with gratitude and worry. "Be careful, uncle." Benjen clasped his forearm. "The wolf's blood is strong. Winterfell endures." Nender. He left that night, slipping from the gates with his hand-picked scouts, men of the old blood, silent as snow. They tracked the raiders by their campfires, listening from the trees, watching from the reeds. Benjen sent word of every move, every plan, each message coded in ways only a Stark or a Spider might understand. In a ruined village near the White Knife, Benjen caught a Lannister captain alone, waylaid his men, and questioned him beneath the stars. He learned of a plan, a feint meant to draw Robb south, to leave Winterfell vulnerable to a second, larger force approaching from the west. Benjen raced north, pushing his men and horses to the brink. At the gates, he delivered the warning. Robb must hold Winterfell, trust the bannermen, and beware false flags. The council met at once, and the news changed everything. Robb strengthened the watch, called up every available man, sent riders to every corner of the north. Sentries were posted on every wall. Children were brought inside at dusk. Benjen watched his family come together, the old bonds reforged in adversity. Even Sansa and Arya, so often at odds, spent long evenings together in the library, reading old tales and learning the North's histories. Bran grew into his new duties, guiding the guards and studying the castle's secret ways. In those tense days, Benjen found himself at peace for the first time in years. He moved not as a shadow, but as a man among kin. Teaching, guarding, loving in his own silent way. But the old habits never faded. One night, as he sat in the Godswood, he sensed movement in the darkness. A raven, black as pitch, descending to perch on the heart tree. Benjen approached, curiosity pricking. The raven cocked its head, regarding him with bright, knowing eyes. Tied to its leg was a scroll, sealed in black wax. He took it, heart pounding, and broke the seal. The message was brief, words written in Varys' careful hand. "Benjen, the storm grows. The realm fractures. Your old skills may soon be needed, not just in the north, but for all Westeros. Remember, a shadow can shield as well as strike. Varys." He burned the message in the heart tree's fire, watching the parchment curl and blacken. He looked up at the pale face carved in the old weirwood, and felt the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. Family and duty. North and realm. Wolf and shadow. He was Benjen Stark, and his path would not be simple, nor safe. But as long as Winterfell stood, as long as the North remembered, he would walk it, silent, watchful, always ready. The war would come. The game would go on. But for the first time, Benjen was not afraid. He was home. Kandi. The first snows of winter dusted Winterfell's rooftops like sifted flour, softening the battlements and drifts that gathered along the Godswood's ancient roots. In the courtyard, stable boys stamped their feet and muttered about frozen water buckets, while the kennel master's hounds raised their noses to scent the chill. It was a beautiful hush, the kind that made even war seem distant, a half-remembered shadow beyond the walls. But Benjen Stark trusted no silence. He read omens in the flight of crows, in the nervous glances of men watching the sky, in the staccato reports of ravens riding ahead of storm and spear alike. News of the war trickled north on wings, black as sorrow. Robb Stark's banners were on the march. One letter told of victory at the Whispering Wood, another of fierce skirmishes on the Green Fork, and a third, hastily scrawled in Catelyn's own hand. bore only 3 words: trust no one. Benjen burned the letter and kept its ashes in a pouch at his belt, a silent ward. In the slow, anxious days that followed, Benjen became the still axis about which Winterfell turned. He supervised the stockpiling of grain and salted meats, inspected the walls with Sir Roderick, taught Bran to loose arrows from the ramparts, and listened to the songs Sansa sang to calm Rickon when the wind howled at night. He drilled the guards at dawn and rode the woods at dusk, eyes and ears open for any sign of southern gold or banners in the snow. He became, once more, a man made for secrets. A tap on a stable door at midnight brought word from Howland Reed's Crannogmen, a Lannister party riding for White Harbor, bearing false peace terms. In the kitchens, old Nella passed him a honey cake with a message baked into the crust. 3 riders with the gold lion on their cloaks had been seen speaking with a local brewer. Benjen's network of watchers grew, each loyal not to gold, but to the name Stark and the promise of home. He worked with Maester Luwin to cipher and decipher the endless flow of ravens. Requests for help, warnings of skirmishes, news of bannermen shifting their oaths or holding them firm. When Bran dreamed of direwolves and crows, Benjen listened and quietly arranged to double the sentries on the east wall. If the children questioned the new routines, always a fresh face at the gate, always 2 guards where once there had been one, Benjen only smiled and told them that a wise pack stayed close together when the cold winds blew. It was on one such morning that Benjen awoke to a hush deeper than usual. In the great hall, the household was gathered, servants and lords, young and old, their faces strained and hungry for word. Maester Luwin stood at the high table, a scroll in his trembling hands. He read aloud, "Ned Stark, traitor. Ned Stark, executed for plotting against the king. Ned Stark, dead." Benjen did not move, nor flinch, nor cry out. The words fell on him like a blizzard, blinding, but he held himself rigid. The hall erupted, screams, cries, oaths sworn, and old men weeping. Sansa collapsed, pale as linen. Arya fled the hall. Bran stared wide-eyed and silent. And Rickon sobbed, clinging to Catelyn's skirts. Benjen forced himself to move. He found Arya in the Godswood, kneeling beneath the heart tree, fists clenched in the snow. "Uncle," she whispered, voice raw. "They killed him. They killed father." He knelt beside her, wrapped her in his arms, and let her weep. Her sobs cut through him sharper than any blade. When her tears slowed, he wiped her cheeks. "Listen to me, Arya. You are your father's daughter, and the wolf's blood is strong in you. But now you must be stronger still. You must survive for him, for your mother, for the North." "Then," she nodded, jaw clenched, tears freezing on her cheeks. He led her back to the hall, where Robb's letter had come at last. One line hastily scrawled: "The North will remember. I ride for vengeance. Guard them, uncle." Catelyn, her grief spent, stood before the hearth, her eyes hard as iron. "We must hold the North, Benjen. The Lannisters will come for us now. We are all that is left." Benjen gathered the children that night. Bran's face was set in grim lines, Sansa's eyes empty and red-rimmed. Rickon nestled against Shaggy Dog's black fur. He looked at them all, each a fragment of Ned, each his charge now. "We are Starks," Benjen said quietly. "This is our home. The world will try to take it from us, but we hold fast. No one here is alone. We will grieve, and then we will fight, each in our own way, as our father would wish." The snows thickened. Winterfell closed itself against the world. Hearths blazing, spears sharpened, old alliances reaffirmed. Benjen met with bannermen late into the night. Old Nan muttering tales of the Night's King. Manderly's men swearing loyalty over cups of sour red. The Umbers roaring for battle. Through it all, Benjen kept the house together, the Stark name strong, hope alive. He never forgot his other lessons. When word came that a band of sellswords had taken refuge near Barrowton, Benjen rode out under cover of darkness with a handful of his quietest men. In the shadow of ancient stones, he parleyed with the mercenary captain. Gold for silence, bread for loyalty. A promise that when the North called, the sellswords would ride at his side. Better to win a blade than cross it. That, too, Varys had taught him. Some nights, He found Sansa sitting in the empty solar, tracing her finger along a line of embroidery that would never be finished. "Do you hate them, Uncle?" she asked one evening, not looking up. He paused. "The Lannisters?" She nodded. He sat beside her. "Hate is a weapon, Sansa. Use it wisely. Never let it rule you. Your father believed in mercy, even for his enemies. We must try to honor that, as best we can." Benjen. Her lips trembled. "But I don't want to forgive them. Not ever." He touched her hair. "Then don't. But don't let your hate blind you either. You are your mother's daughter too. Strong, wise. The North needs your heart." She leaned against him, silent, the unfinished embroidery falling from her lap. Benjen visited the Godswood more often, seeking counsel in the old ways. He watched Bran climb the trees, listened to Arya spar with Sir Roderick's squires, saw Rickon tumble in the snow with the direwolves. Each child grieved in their own way, but each was a Stark, and Benjen would let no harm come to them. In the deep of winter, a raven arrived bearing a cryptic message. Varys' script, unmistakable. "The Queen grows restless. The imp is in peril. Allies may be found in unlikely places. Trust in the wolves and the reeds." He burned the letter as always, feeling its weight settle in his heart. The days shortened, the nights stretched longer. One evening, a second raven brought news. Robb's host had won a great victory. Jaime Lannister captured at Riverrun. The hall erupted in joy, but Benjen kept his counsel. War was far from over, and each victory brought new perils. The Lannisters would not forgive nor forget. He redoubled the watch, sent fresh scouts south, arranged with Howland Reed to flood the causeways at the first sign of southern banners. He gathered the children and taught them the signs. 3 knocks at the door for danger, a candle left burning in the kitchen for safety, a stone atop the well for a secret meeting. They became a family of spies, each with their role, each learning to survive as both wolves and shadows. Then, as the year turned and the wind shifted north, word reached Winterfell of a stranger riding from the wall. A black-clad man, face hidden beneath a hood, bearing grave news. Benjen rode out to meet him at the King's Road's edge, recognizing the wary stance, the silent tread. "Sam Tarly?" he called, lowering his cowl. The boy, round, pale, nodded. "Benjen Stark?" "I am," Benjen replied, eyes narrowing. Sam drew a letter from his cloak, the wax seal broken, the parchment crumpled. "The Dead Walk. The wall is under siege. Jon, your nephew, he fights, but they come in numbers we cannot count. He said to warn you, warn the North." Benjen read the letter by the fire that night, the words stark as winter. They are real. Tell no one but the blood. Prepare. He gathered the family in the Godswood under a slate sky. "There is danger coming," he told them. "Not just Lannister swords, but something older, colder. The wall may not hold forever." Wow. Bran's eyes widened. Sansa's lips pressed thin. Arya's jaw clenched. "What do we do?" Bran whispered. "We prepare," Benjen answered. "We trust each other. And we remember, whatever comes, we are Starks. We fight for the North, for our home, for all the living." He taught them the old ways then. How to find shelter in the woods. How to hide food. How to track by star and stone. Arya listened with rapt attention. Bran absorbed every word. Sansa forced herself to master the practical details, even as she dreamed of summer. Winter deepened. The hearths blazed. At night, Benjen walked the battlements, eyes fixed on the southern horizon, always waiting for the first flicker of gold or the first unnatural blue fire in the woods. The day came when a horn sounded on the distant hill, a single note, long and low. Not an enemy, not yet. A scout, bearing news. Benjen met him at the gate. The boy's cheeks were wind-burned, his cloak crusted with frost. "Riders, my lord, 24 at least, cloaked in Lannister red. They camp at the old watchtower. More follow further south. Benjen nodded. You've done well. Eat, rest. Tell no one what you saw. Nennerwine? He sent ravens to Rob, to Howland, even to Varys, using the old cipher. Then he donned his sword, pulled on his black gloves, and gathered the best of his scouts. He found Catelyn in the solar, her hands folded tight. I must go, he said simply. She nodded, tears bright in her eyes. Bring them home, Benjen. Bring them all home. He rode out at dusk, snow swirling around him, the land vast and silent as death. At the old watchtower, he watched the enemy's campfires flicker, listened to the drunken boasts, the careless threats. He saw the banner, red and gold, flapping above the tents, a lion's paw with a crimson slash across it. Benjen waited for night, then slipped through the shadows, close enough to hear the captains plotting. They spoke of a prize for capturing a Stark, of burning Winterfell to break the North's will. He marked their faces, their numbers, every word. When he slipped away before dawn, no one saw nor heard. He led his men home through the white silence, the fire of resolve burning cold and bright within him. Winterfell's gates opened to receive him. He called the council at once. The enemy is near, he told them, but the North is ready. We hold the walls, trust our kin, watch the woods. When the Lannisters come, they will find not prey, but wolves. He saw the pride kindle in their eyes. Bran straightened, Arya grinned, Sansa stood with her chin high. And Rickon? Smallest of all, gripped his brother's hand. Benjen looked to the godswood, to the weirwood's face bleeding in the snow, and made his vow. He would not fail them. Not now. Not ever. The wind howled beyond the walls. Winter was here. And in the heart of Winterfell, the last true wolf prepared to meet the storm, ready to fight not just for secrets and shadows, but for the living, for family, for the hope of spring. Aika. The snow deepened in the yard, falling steadily day and night, erasing all tracks by dawn. By midwinter, Winterfell's towers rose like islands in a white sea. The old godswood stark against the blankness, its red leaves stubborn as blood. Each morning, Benjen walked the ramparts before dawn, leaving a trail of bootprints that vanished before noon, a silent record of his watchfulness. He measured the mood of the guards and the anxiety in the small folks' voices. Fear could be as deadly as any blade if left to fester. The Lannister threat pressed closer. Benjen's scouts returned, haggard and wind-chapped, bringing rumors of a larger host mustering near the western passes. Lannister banners intermingled with the black manticore of House Payne, the green and white of House Ryswell, the broken lance of House Tallheart in mourning, forced into southern service by the loss of their lord. Treachery bred in winter's shadow. Every message Benjen sent southward, coded and circumspect, spoke of caution and preparation. Robb's letters grew less frequent, yet more urgent. One spoke of dire news from the Riverlands. Tywin Lannister had cut the supply lines. Jaime still lingered in chains, and rumors now named Stannis as a usurper at Storm's End. Catelyn read every word with an iron calm, and answered Robb as only a mother could, telling him of his siblings' growth and Benjen's ceaseless vigilance. But every night she sat with Benjen by the kitchen hearth, voice low, grief gnawing at her spirit. "Do you think they'll break us?" she asked one evening as the wind howled. "If Tywin comes, if they take the castle." He shook his head, gentle but unwavering. "They will try, but they do not know the North. I've spent years among men who thought gold or cruelty could buy anything, but the snows defeat them, the woods swallow them, and their swords mean little when every face is strange. Winterfell endures, Cat. It is not just stone and timber, it is will. It is memory." Catelyn pressed a hand to her brow. "You sound like Ned." Benjen managed a faint smile. "Then I am doing my duty." That night, a shadow flickered outside the hall. Benjen left the warmth. Stepping onto the battlements to find Arya crouched on the ice-rimed wall, wrapped in a ragged cloak, her face ghostly in the moonlight. "I can't sleep," she said, not looking at him. He sat beside her, careful of the brittle stone. You hear things, don't you? The men talking, the women weeping. Arya's lips trembled, but she nodded. They say the Lannisters will burn the city. They say there are things coming from the woods. Ghosts. Ben? There are always ghosts in the north. He offered her a piece of sweet root, and she chewed it, stubborn. But you are not alone. Not ever. She met his eyes, her own shining with tears she refused to shed. Teach me how not to be afraid. He squeezed her shoulder, pride and sorrow mixing in his heart. Fear is part of you, Arya. But you choose what it makes you do. If it drives you to run, run smart. If it makes you fight, fight clever. And if you cannot do either, survive. Surviving is its own kind of courage. Arya nodded, sniffed, and looked up at the stars. Can you teach me to vanish, like you do? He smiled and touched her brow. Every wolf has a trick. I'll show you mine. In the days that followed, he schooled Arya and Bran in the skills he'd learned at Varys Knee. How to move silently. How to listen for the weight of footsteps behind a door. How to read a room without seeming to look. He taught Sansa a different set of lessons. How to judge truth behind flattery. How to move among dangerous company with her words as her armor. Even Rickon, wild and heedless, learned to watch the direwolves for warning signs and to keep to secret paths if danger found him. Benjen never spoke of what he feared most, that the real danger might not come from the Lannisters, but from the things no southern lord believed in. The cold that crept over the wall, the dead things his brother's letters had hinted at. The north was old, and old things woke in long winters. Maester Luwin watched Benjen with a wary fondness, sometimes warning him against frightening the children with old tales. Benjen only nodded, but at night he visited the godswood and knelt beneath the red leaves, offering silent prayers. Sometimes, Bran joined him, quiet and somber, eyes distant. One night, as the wind battered the walls, Bran spoke. Do you think Father is watching us? From the godswood or the stars? Benjen wrapped an arm around his nephew's shoulders. I think he watches from both, and from the blood in your veins. He is with us, Bran. He always will be. Betty. Bran nodded, gazing into the darkness, and Benjen sensed that the boy's mind was far beyond Winterfell, roaming among roots and crows, seeking truths older than any man. When word came of Tywin Lannister's approach, Winterfell was as ready as it could be. The gates were reinforced, every able-bodied man drilled for defense, stores hidden in every cellar, the youngest children sent to the deepest vaults. Benjen spent each day riding the perimeter, checking on the Crannogman scouts Howland Reed had sent. Silent men who could vanish into marsh or snow and appear where least expected. One day, as Benjen rode out along the frozen stream, he encountered Mira Reed, spear in hand and eyes bright beneath a fur-lined hood. My father says you worry too much, she said as greeting. Benjen dismounted and smiled. It's my calling. What word? She handed him a scrap of parchment, stained with mud and blood. Lannister scouts found 3 slain. 1 captured. Westford still safe. She shrugged, proud. They never saw us coming. Benjen's smile was wolfish. You are your father's daughter. Together, they returned to the castle. That night, the captured Lannister was questioned in the crypts, Benjen speaking softly while the shadows danced. The man, terrified and shivering, confessed all he knew. A force of 500 men, led by Sir Gregor Clegane, planned to strike at Winterfell in 2 days' time, aiming to catch the North unprepared before Robb could return. Benjen relayed the warning to Catelyn and the council. Sir Roderick was resolute. We hold the gates. We have the walls. Let them come. Gan? Benjen's mind raced. Gregor Clegane is not one for patience or siege. He'll try to burn us out or terrorize the small folk, draw us into the open. We need to be ready for fire, for treachery. The castle itself may become the last refuge. Catelyn nodded, her face drawn. What would Ned do? Benjen thought of his brother, of quiet words and stubborn strength. He would hold. He would trust in his people, and in the land itself. And now, he spent the next hours preparing secret routes out of the castle. Should the walls fall, tunnels known only to Starks and a few trusted retainers, old passageways sealed for 100 years. He stationed Mira and her crannogmen at key points, ready to vanish into the woods with the children if the worst should happen. That night, as the torches guttered in the wind, Benjen met Arya in the armory. She wore her sword, a gift from Jon, named Needle, belted at her waist, eyes bright with excitement and fear. "I'm ready," she said. He handed her a small packet, wrapped in oilskin. A lockpick, a bit of charcoal, a sliver of glass. 3 tools for 3 choices, he told her. Escape. Signal. Cut away free. Use them only if you must. She grinned. Fierce as a wildcat. "Thank you, Uncle." He crouched beside her, his voice low. "Remember, Arya, your first duty is to survive. Protect your family. One day, when this is over, you'll fight on your own turn." He hugged her tightly, and she held him close. "I won't let you down." As the appointed dawn approached, the snow fell in thick curtains. Scouts signaled the approach of Cleganne's force, torches moving through the trees. A red lion banner visible even through the storm. Winterfell's walls bristled with archers, the gates barred and reinforced. The enemy made camp on a rise half a league distant, Clegane's brutal laughter echoing faintly. That night, fires lit the sky. Clegane's men burning farms and outbuildings, slaughtering livestock, terrorizing the small folk. Benjen dispatched riders to gather any survivors and bring them into the castle. At dawn, the attack began. The Lannisters rode at the gates, flaming arrows arcing over the walls, their battle cries muffled by the storm. Winterfell's archers answered with a silent hail, felling the first wave before they reached the moat. Stones and boiling water rained down. Benjen watched from the battlements, calm and grim, directing men where the need was greatest. Clegane's men tried to batter the main gate, but the reinforced oak held. A second wave attempted the postern, only to be repelled by Mira and her crannogmen, spears darting from the shadows. Fires caught along the outer stables, but snow and quick-thinking grooms kept them from spreading. The battle raged all morning. Sansa and Rickon sheltered deep below the great hall, with Old Nan and Maester Luwin. Bran watched from a tower window, relaying signals by flag to archers on the distant walls. Arya slipped through the chaos, messages hidden in her sleeve, darting between groups of defenders, passing warnings to Benjen and Sir Roderick, where the line was weakest. It was the kind of siege Benjen had always feared, bloody, confusing, perilous in every way. But the North fought like wolves at bay, every man and woman fierce, every arrow spent to its last feather. By afternoon the Lannisters broke. The storm had turned to blizzard. The dead and wounded vanished in the white. Gregor Clegane himself was seen retreating, swearing vengeance, but for the moment, Winterfell stood. Benjen walked the walls as the light faded, counting the living, offering quiet words to the wounded, honoring the dead. When he entered the great hall, he found Catelyn waiting, her eyes shining with pride and tears. "You saved us," she said, voice thick. "We saved ourselves," he replied. "The North endures." That night, Winterfell's fires blazed bright. The children gathered at Benjen's side, the direwolves at their feet. For a time, they were only a family. No lords, no wars, just the last of the wolves in the heart of the storm. Benjen gazed into the flames, remembering Varys' words, his brother's lessons, the promise he'd made to the children and to himself. The North had survived the first assault. There would be more, wars and winters, enemies old and new. But for now, the walls held, and hope burned like a beacon in the snow. He would keep them safe. He would teach them what he knew. How to move in shadow, how to fight as wolves, how to survive as Starks. Whatever the price, whatever the darkness waiting beyond the gates, Benjen Stark would not fail. Winter had come, and within its heart, the pack endured, stronger than steel, sharper than secrets, bound by blood and love and memory that not even the longest night could break. A.K. The snows swallowed the dead by morning, erasing the last stains of battle and returning the world to silence. The wounded were carried inside and tended to in the great hall, where the air was thick with the tang of blood and boiling wine. Benjen walked among them, praising the living, comforting the dying, and listening. Always listening, for whispers of new dangers. Outside, Winterfell's walls gleamed with frost, arrow-splintered but unbroken, proof to the north and all the realm that the old blood endured. In the aftermath, the castle was restless. The small folk spoke of the siege in reverent tones, calling it a sign that the gods watched over House Stark. Children played at wolves and lions in the snowy yard, chasing one another with sticks and wooden shields. Old Nan spun tales of the last winter, when the dead had come walking, and the youngest children huddled closer to their mother's skirts. But Benjen's vigilance did not waver. He knew better than to trust in peace. As repairs began and the fallen were laid to rest beneath the heart tree, he summoned his most trusted, Mira and the Cranagmen, the quickest of the guards, Bran and Arya, even Sansa, who carried secrets with a careful grace. In the candlelit warmth of the library, they gathered. Benjen set maps and coded ledgers before them. The Lannisters may return, and others with them. He told his quiet council, "We must see further, listen harder. Bran, you know the secret ways better than anyone. Show Mira the tunnels. Arya, your eyes and ears must become mine in the yard, in the stables, wherever the guards might miss a stranger. Sansa, you are the lady of this keep when your mother's at council. Trust the servants, but never blindly. If you doubt a word, come to me at once. Mira, move as the reeds move, silent and swift. I want to know every stranger within 5 leagues. Menetrano." They nodded, each understanding the gravity. Arya, fierce with pride, vowed she would not be caught by any lion's claws. Bran, solemn and hungry for purpose, took to his lessons with new resolve. Sansa listened carefully, her grief for her father settling into something hard and keen-edged beneath her courtesy. Even Rickon, too young for such burdens, sat close with Shaggy Dog at his feet, watching his uncle with eyes that missed little. The days turned colder. A second raven arrived from Robb. His host wintered on the southern border, supply lines threatened by both Lannister raiders and the storm. He spoke of victories and losses, of bannermen quarreling, of the price in blood and grain. "Hold fast," he wrote. "Do not yield the north. Trust no word from King's Landing, nor any peace that comes with a lion's seal." Benjen sent word by secret path to Howland Reed. "Keep watch at the neck. Flood the causeways if southern banners near the marsh." He dispatched 2 of the fastest riders to warn Lady Manderly in White Harbor, instructing her to guard the port and trust only the old codes. Quiet messages went to the Umbers and Glovers. "Move families to the castles, watch the woods, keep the old signals burning." Catelyn met with Benjen nightly, her hair threaded with silver, her bearing still that of a woman who had seen and survived too much. "You make us ready for a siege that may never come," she said once, voice heavy with fatigue. "Do you ever rest, Benjen?" He looked at her over the fire's glow. "Varys taught me that the worst enemy is the one you do not see coming. The South will not forget its wounds, Cat. And now the dead walk, or so Joan's letters say. I would rather have you angry with me for being too cautious than mourning what we lose for being unprepared." Catelyn managed a small, brittle smile. "You sound like my Ned." "I hope I do," he answered quietly. Another week passed. Life returned to Winterfell in wary fits and starts. Sansa organized the mending of torn banners, the distribution of stores to the small folk who'd fled into the castle. Arya sparred with squires in the yard, quick and silent as a shadow. Bran guided guards through hidden passageways, mapping every crack and blind turn. Even Rickon, wild and restless, ran errands for old Nan, his direwolf a black ghost at his side. But one dusk, as Benjen watched the torches being lit on the ramparts, a horn sounded. 3 low, drawn-out blasts, the sign of a stranger, a warning older than the castle itself. Benjen was on the battlements in an instant, bow in hand, his breath pluming before him. The guards pointed to the eastern woods. There, a single rider approached, wrapped in black, leading a second horse burdened with a limp form. Benjen's heart clenched as he recognized the ragged cloak, the black and gray furs. He called down, "Open the gate." The rider slumped as he crossed into the yard, blood staining the snow behind him. Benjen hurried forward and caught him as he slid from the saddle. "Uncle." It was Jon Snow, paler, harder, eyes haunted by things seen only at the world's end. Across the second horse hung Sam Tarly, barely conscious, his face blue with cold. Benjen barked orders. "Get Maester Luwin. Sansa, fetch blankets. Bran, help me." Nansau. They carried Jon and Sam into the hall, laid them by the fire. As Luwin worked, Benjen crouched beside Jon, gripping his hand. "Dead things," Jon rasped. "They broke the wall. The wildlings fled south. Many are dead. I barely escaped. They're coming, Uncle. The dead walk." A chill colder than any snow passed through Benjen. He looked to Maester Luwin, who shook his head in mute horror. When Jon slept, Benjen called council in the solar. Catelyn, Bran, Arya, Sansa, even Maester Luwin, and the senior guards. "We can no longer pretend this is only a southern war," Benjen said, his voice carrying over the hush. "We prepare for Lannisters and Boltons, but now we must prepare for the dead. Every story old Nan ever told us is now a warning. Every lesson Varys taught me, now a shield against the darkness." He issued orders. The blacksmiths forged more arrowheads, swords, axes, anything that could be wielded by trembling hands. Every boy and girl who could walk was drilled in the use of spear and shield. Caches of food and water were hidden throughout the castle. Howland Reed sent word. Crannogmen would harry any invader, living or dead, that crossed the neck. Jon woke 3 days later, gaunt but determined. "We have to send warning to Robb and the other lords," he insisted. "They won't believe it, but if Winterfell stands, the North may survive." Benjen clasped his shoulder. "We'll warn them, but you must rest, Jon. You're needed here." As the days shortened, small folk from the outlying villages streamed into Winterfell, driven by stories of corpses walking, of blue-eyed monsters in the trees. Some called Benjen the White Wolf. The ghost returned to save the living. He accepted it with grim humor. He was a Stark, a man of secrets, but now, in the face of a nightmare rising from legend, he let the old tales shape him. Sansa sang to the children at night, her voice strong and clear above the moan of the wind. Arya ranged the halls in the yard, teaching younger children to fight, always quick with a jest or a scowl. Bran dreamed of the three-eyed crow and whispered warnings that saved more than one life. Old tunnels unblocked, weak timbers shored up before disaster struck. Jon, when he could stand, walked the battlements with Benjen, recounting what he had seen. The Night's Watch slaughtered, the Wall lost, the others marshalling an army of the dead. "We have to hold," Jon said, eyes bleak but burning. "If Winterfell falls, there will be no safe place left." Benjen nodded, pride and sorrow mixing in his chest. "We will hold," the North remembers. The enemy came not with trumpets, but with a silence deeper than night. The snows redoubled. The sky turned the color of old bone. The dead approached in eerie quiet, blue eyes gleaming at the edge of the wood, white shadows slipping among the trees. Those who watched from the towers said it was as if the snows themselves had risen, pale and merciless, to claim the living. Benjen led the defense. He trusted no gate to hold forever, no wall to keep out the cold. The archers stood ready, fires lit atop the battlements. When the first whites broke from the tree line, they were met with flaming arrows and oil. The smell of burning flesh filled the air, but the dead pressed on, heedless of pain. Arya and Bran moved through the chaos, relaying Benjen's orders, rallying frightened boys and girls, darting along the walls. Sansa directed the wounded to hidden cellars, her calm a beacon. Jon fought atop the main gate, Longclaw flashing blue and white, each blow dropping another corpse to the snow. Benjen moved like a shadow, everywhere at once. shouting orders, drawing blades, setting the youngest to work hauling oil and wood. He fought in the yard, blade flashing, the old rage of the wolf burning in his veins. When the others finally showed themselves, tall, gaunt, inhumanly graceful, Benjen faced them with dragonglass and fire, never flinching, even as the cold seemed to bite through leather and bone. The battle lasted all night. By dawn, the snows were heaped with the dead, most burned to charred bone. The others vanished before the rising sun, leaving only silence and the shuddering breaths of the living. Winterfell still stood. The price was terrible. The wounded filled every hall. The weirwood roots ran red with blood. But the pack had survived. Benjen knelt in the godswood that morning, blood and frost on his hands. He looked to the heart tree, its face weeping red, and whispered, "We endure. We always endure." He gathered the children, Jon by his side. "You fought bravely," he told them. "You are Starks, everyone. The North lives because we did not break." Jon, battered but unbowed, nodded. "We'll have to fight again. This is only the beginning." Benjen looked at the faces of those he loved. Arya fierce and silent, Sansa calm and proud, Bran wise beyond his years, Rickon wild and unbroken, Jon steadfast. He felt Ned's spirit in each of them, felt the ancient strength of Winterfell in his own bones. "We are ready," Benjen said, his voice strong as the stones beneath their feet. "Let them come." The storm raged on, and in the heart of winter, the last true wolves stood together beneath the bleeding tree, unbowed, unbroken, a light in the darkness. And as the wind howled beyond the walls, Benjen Stark knew. Secrets and shadows had saved them once, but love, courage, and the old blood would save them again. The North would remember, and the pack would never yield. Aye. When the worst of the battle had passed, Winterfell was a place remade by blood and frost. In the aftermath, every corridor became a sick room, every hand needed for mending walls or mending wounds. The godswood became both sanctuary and tomb, its red leaves sifting over fresh graves and silent prayers. It was there, beneath the heart tree, that Benjen stood most nights, the carved face streaked with snowmelt and old, slow tears. He listened to the silence, to the groan of stone cooling in the darkness, to the heartbeat of the children sleeping in the keep above. The nights after the siege were the hardest. Benjen slept rarely, taking his rest in brief snatches. On a bench outside the sick room, curled in the corner of the solar with sword across his knees, at the foot of the great stairs, waiting for the hush that signaled a new threat or another of the children crying out in some old half-remembered dream. It was Arya, always, who woke most often. He would find her standing in a shaft of moonlight, silent, staring out the window toward the woods. "You're not afraid, are you?" she asked him once, her voice small but steady. He crouched beside her. "Only fools are never afraid, Arya. I am afraid every night. But I trust in you, in your brother and sisters, in all of us together. Fear keeps us sharp, but it can't make us run, not unless we choose." She leaned against him, neither weeping nor trembling. "I want to be brave like you, like father." He brushed a strand of hair from her brow. "You already are." In the pale light of morning, Benjen walked the ramparts, where the snow had packed into strange, wind-carved drifts, hiding the cracks in the walls and muffling the sound of boots. Sir Roderick and Maester Luwin awaited him by the main gate, both looking older than winter itself. "The wounded fare as well as they can," Luwin reported. "We lost 6 in the night, but the children are strong." Sansa was up before dawn, comforting those left without mothers. Arya helped with the water, and Bran, well, the boy seems to hear everything these days. Roderick added, "We've posted double watches. The Crannogmen say the woods are quiet, but none of us trust it. No word from Robb. Only rumors. Some say he's beaten the Lannisters at the Twins, others that he's gone south." "Men say." Benjen listened, nodding at each detail, knowing even lies could carry the shape of a future threat. "Keep the gates barred," he said at last. "Send out scouts at dawn and dusk. Anyone trying to cross the fields at night should be challenged, friend or foe." Roderick grunted, approving. We'll hold. As days turned, Winterfell rebuilt itself, stone by careful stone. Sansa led the women and children in sewing new banners, gray direwolves on white, stark and bright against the gloom. Arya trained every squire who could stand, and many who could not, showing them the knife tricks Benjen had taught her, the silent movement, the ways of hiding and listening. Bran, in his dreams, watched through the eyes of crows and wolves, bringing word of wildlings crossing the rivers or dead men stirring beyond the trees. Rickon chased the direwolves in the yard, his laughter brittle but unbroken. Jon Snow, still weak but healing, became Benjen's shadow. They spoke often, sometimes in the godswood, sometimes on the wall. Jon's news was grim. The wall was shattered in places, the Night's Watch nearly gone, wildlings scattered or slain, the others massing beyond the ruins. They will come again, Jon said, staring at the ice-choked river. They won't stop until all the living are dead or fled. Benjen's reply was quiet, resolute. Then we will not flee. The Raven couriers carried desperate messages south and west, letters to White Harbor and Barrowton, to Old Castle and the Last Hearth, warning of the dead, begging for food, steal every scrap of hope. Many ravens did not return. When news came back, it was often grim. Villages burned, roads vanished under drifts, lords fighting each other over dwindling stores. One evening, as Benjen sat with the council, Sansa entered, her hair pulled back, her dress plain but perfectly kept. There's word from the west, she said, holding a sealed letter. House Manderley sends what stores they can, but White Harbor is besieged. My lady says they saw sails, strange black ships. On the horizon, the city prepares for siege. Benjen took the letter, breaking the seal, reading quickly. The threat was as she'd said, and more. Tales of men with blue lips and dead eyes, ships that came from nowhere and vanished on the tide. Benjen felt his skin prickle. They come by sea now, he murmured. Arya was at his side, quick as ever. Then we fight them in the water. He squeezed her shoulder, pride and dread warring in his heart. We fight them wherever we must, but we need allies, even Southrons if they'll listen. That night, he sat with Jon beneath the heart tree, the godswood silent, but for the sigh of snow in the boughs. Is there no message you would send? Benjen asked, almost reluctant. Jon thought, then said, tell Sam, if you can. He's at Old Town, or was. If anyone can find a way to kill the others, it's Samwell Tarly. Benjen sent a raven at once, every word cloaked in code. The long night comes. The wolf's den is threatened. Seek the fire in the dark. 2 days later, a group of wildlings appeared at the gates, ragged, half-starved, faces hollow with loss. They asked for Jon, and Benjen led them to the hall. The leader, a woman with braids of gray and red, knelt at Jon's feet. We come in peace, she rasped. The dead chased us from the woods. We seek only shelter. We will fight, if we must, or serve. Benjen looked to Jon, who nodded. You are welcome at Winterfell, Jon said. But you fight with us. The dead are everyone's enemy. It was Arya, then Sansa, who arranged tots and shared out bread. The small folk watched with fear, but Benjen's word was law. And soon the wildlings were training beside the squires in the yard, learning the lay of the walls, the secret paths through the crypts. The nights grew longer, colder. Sometimes Benjen thought he heard voices in the wind, his brothers, old Nans, voices from years and winters past. But he did not waver. He was the last shield, and he would not yield. On the coldest night yet, when even the direwolves shivered, Maester Luwin called Benjen to the rookery. A message from the south, Luwin said, holding out a battered scroll. The seal was Baratheon, Stannis, or what was left of him. Benjen read the words in the flickering candlelight. A force gathers at Moat Cailin. We come north to stand against the darkness. Hold as long as you can. If Winterfell falls, the realm is lost. He sent word to the council, to Howland Reed, to every ally still living. The keep became a storm of preparation. Walls reinforced, fires laid in every yard, archers posted on every height. Benjen himself took up the sword again, practicing in the pale light with Jon, Arya, even Sansa, whose blade was more for ceremony but whose spirit was fierce and true. When the dead came again, it was not with trumpets or banners, but with a moaning wind and a black sky. The living stood on the walls, torches burning, every man and woman and child who could hold a weapon ready. Jon led the wildlings on the battlements. Benjen commanded the inner yard. Sansa and Bran guided the children to the vaults below. The others moved like frost across the world, shattering every living thing they touched. But Winterfell held. Benjen moved among his people, his family, silent as shadow, steel in hand, hope burning in his breast. In the thick of battle, Arya saved a wildling girl from a White's frozen grasp. Bran's warnings averted a breach in the gate, and Sansa's calm steadied the terrified youngest. Jon fought like a man possessed, long claw flashing blue fire. By dawn, the dead withdrew, leaving a silence so deep that the survivors wept. Benjen stood in the snow, blood on his blade, watching the sun rise over the white walls of Winterfell. He felt Ned's presence at his side, the old strength in his heart. The North lived. The pack endured. He gathered the family in the Godswood as the sun climbed higher. "This is not the end," he told them. "But we have survived the worst of the night. The living must be the light for the rest of the world. When the others come again, we will be ready, and we will not be alone." They stood together, wolves and wildlings, Southron and Northman, child and warrior, beneath the bleeding tree. And Benjen Stark, who had once served as a shadow in another's web, stood now as the beating heart of Winterfell, guardian of memory, keeper of hope, and the first line against the coming dark. In the snow and the silence, a new dawn broke. The world waited, and the wolves of Winterfell braced to meet it.